Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Victoria Hardy. As a mum of two and at just 38 years old, she's 4 years post-hysterectomy, having suffered with severe endometriosis all her life. Victoria tells a deeply moving story that sees her still finding her way through menopause and all the challenges that can bring, especially in terms of mental health. As a vibrant, determined and outgoing human being, she brings light and humour into even the darkest corners, and you can't help but be drawn to her kind, humble and engaging manner. We met up so I could find out more. Victoria, it is so lovely to meet you. I've been really excited about this, having looked at your Instagram. I love your Instagram and read your article in the Metro as well. Would you like to start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hello, I'm Victoria Hardy, also known as Ginge Unhinged on the gram. I'm 38. I'm a mum of two, a tween and a teen. God help me. And I am really passionate about sharing not only my story, but really vocalising other people's stories about women's health, particularly menstrual health and menopause, because I find myself here a little bit earlier than I had planned. And so I'm a big advocate for that. And I do that through my workplace and also outside of work too.
Where do you work?
So I work for a large corporate bank. I work in transformation, so I look after a lot of the colleagues across the UK and the globe. And I've been advocating for menopause in the workplace over the last year, which has been amazing. And then I'm also a writer and I have a podcast and obviously, upcoming content creator on Instagram, it seems. all sort of accidentally.
All sorts of strings to your bow. So tell us about your menopause story, because 38 sounds to most people very young to have the symptoms that you have.
Yeah, so I went into surgical menopause at 34. So in October 2017, I had a full hysterectomy where they removed, I'd already had one ovary removed, and that was due to endometriosis, adenomyosis, which I can never say, and just being my uterus was touching my spine. I had lots of health issues. I'd been in and out of hospital so many times. And my body was just really tired of it all. So I opted for a hysterectomy. I knew it might not be a cure for the endometriosis, but it felt like anything would be better than the pain that I was in and the exhaustion that I was in. Little did I know that I would be hit with the menopause like a bus. And I went into that next phase really uneducated, to be fair. Nobody set me up. I was just given a box of HRT and off you go. So I got thrown into this thing called menopause at 34. And it just, it started with hot flushes, not sleeping, irritability. Very, very quickly, I noticed that my body shape was changing and I just couldn't quite handle things like I would have done before. I was very lethargic. And obviously you've got a healing time after your surgery. So part way I was thinking, well, this is, post-surgery and, I'm a little bit of this new person without all this pain. But things quickly started to unfold for me quite rapidly over the years and have been pretty up and down since, which is why I'm so passionate about talking about it and kind of flying the flag for those that don't kind of fit the box of menopause. It's hard enough for women who are out of perimenopausal or menopausal age, I think, let alone for anybody else like myself, where people go, you don't look old enough, or, really, you're getting those symptoms? I'm like, yeah. So
I think it's so important to educate everybody around us who does take one look at you and they assess and they decide.
Yeah.
There are so many different reasons for experiencing perimenopause, menopause that are not just this nice little neat box, so well in your late 40s or mid 50s. So getting people to understand that it isn't just this one little box, if they even know anything about it at all, is quite important.
It's so true. I always say it has no age, no gender, no cultural boundaries. It is us, it is them, they, everyone, and it affects everybody either directly or indirectly. It is going to affect everybody at some point in their life.
I'm sorry to say that you're not the first person that I've spoken to who wasn't prepared by their medical team. How did that happen? And then how did you find out how to look after yourself?
And yeah, I hear you, because it's, I probably talk to people daily that haven't been prepared, particularly after surgery. I mean, I only recently heard the words for myself in the last 3 weeks. You've suffered medical negligence because you didn't you were not set up hormonally how you should be, and for the last 4 years it's been dangerous, and I'm still in that journey now. I'm still trying to fight for my HRT, and I've had to pay for private rather than NHS, and it's been a journey. But I think, I stepped out of that hospital with this box of HRT none the wiser. I wasn't set up for the menopause part beforehand. It wasn't talked about, and I had been such an advocate for my own body. I'd had to be over the years. I'd had 20 years of endometriosis, and I'd had to advocate for all the treatment. So it was just kind of like one of these things. It was like, right, okay, this box of HRT is just going to be fine, and it was like, you're going to take that for the next 20 years. Off you go. So I was just completely trusting, as you do. But it's only been really in the last couple of years, through my own work and through finding out and obviously building community on places like Instagram, that you realise, oh, hang on a minute, this isn't quite right. But it took me to be in a place where I didn't want to be here anymore, and where I wanted to sign out, and I'd got myself in such a, my symptoms had got so much. I was in such a depressive state. I just, like I said, I couldn't handle things how I would normally, and I didn't know what was happening to me. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought, maybe I had something wrong with my brain. Why couldn't I be on the ball, when kind of, obviously there was physical changes. And it was only until I had to have 6 months off work, actually. I had a lot of counselling. I did a lot of self-therapy, energy work, kind of connecting back into self, which I think is a really powerful thing to do, look at everything holistically. That I realised, well, actually the conversations that I'm now having in the last year to 18 months should have been happening back then. Unfortunately, for some women, they are still happening. So it's, again, why we're doing this great podcast is just about keeping talking, keeping on, and helping women that are now going through this or now going to have surgery be ready, prepared to ask the questions, to challenge. And we've got to keep challenging, because it's really unacceptable to let women suffer so much.
What would be your questions that you would ask women to ask, as it were?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say to them is to think about why you're having a hysterectomy done. So for me, I had endometriosis. I have only just 4 years on been put on progesterone. Now, for somebody that's had endometriosis, if you have too much estrogen in your body, it can be a trigger and can obviously flare up any endometrial cells that are still maybe around my body that weren't in the area that they removed, because we know it's a whole body disease. And I only just found that out. I was put on progesterone just for a couple of weeks, a couple of years ago, and was told to come straight off it because it made my stomach quite bloated, because the doctor didn't really understand what they were prescribing. So I now know that. So that would be my first thing, is to find out, why are you going in? If you're going in for endometriosis, make sure that you're asking the questions, what almost hormonal package do I need? Don't just think HRT. Think about, do I need to have estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone? Ask those questions. If you're having surgery and you're having a full hysterectomy, you're going to react differently to somebody just having their uterus removed. So do a little bit of research and challenge on those questions. I think as well, making sure that you ask about your aftercare. So you are entitled to have yearly blood tests, making sure that your HRT is checked at least every 3 to 6 months. And when I say checked, I don't necessarily mean going along just to a HRT nurse where they say, how's your blood pressure? How are you feeling? Yeah, I'm okay. What's your weight? Okay, tap it into a computer and off you go. You are entitled to speak to somebody professional. So I think keep in contact with your consultant, and at some degree we have to educate them. The NHS do a wonderful job, and we love our doctors and our nurses and our consultants, but the system is letting it down at the moment, and I think we have to be challenging with those questions.
You said you noticed your body changing very quickly. How did that look? What happened there?
Yeah, so again, with me, I was quite fit before I went in for my hysterectomy. I love exercise. I ran on the morning of my op. Obviously, afterwards, I had a 12-week healing period, so things were going to change. I was slower, but yeah, I did gain weight. But I started to gain weight and have done in different areas. So my middle, particularly. I have a nice ledge, as I say right now, which I'm like, oh, that wasn't there before. Suddenly the weight would just kind of build on different areas that it didn't do before. My boobs got huge as well, which I think is a hormonal change of not not getting quite right on the hormones. And my face puffs as well. So I find that it can go quite puffy, which can be a little bit annoying. So yeah, and just because of general fatigue, for me personally, because I'm not on the right hormones right now that I should be on, fatigue kicks in quite quickly. So of course, you go straight for the sugar, or so being really mindful of diet and exercise afterwards, I think is really key. And, once you're on your right meds, then, you can you're set to go really.
What should you be on then? Do you know yet? And have things settled?
So things haven't settled for me. So I'm right in the thick of it at the moment. So I should be on progesterone, testosterone and estrogen. My estrogen levels currently are at 37, which probably doesn't mean anything to anyone right now. But for surgical menopause, I believe they should be between 500 and 1,000. So I'm kind of running on empty. I've been practically dead on estrogen. And although I'm on testosterone, the testosterone won't really be effective until I have a good estrogen intake. For me, my body struggles to absorb the estrogen. So I have tried tablets, patches, gels. So I have been put forward for an implant, which they don't do very often. They have them changed every 6 months. But because of where I live in the country, geographically, my local NHS and hospital don't provide or won't do it for whatever reason, cost, knowledge, I don't know. They just have point blank refused. So I'm kind of left with either being on a very long waiting list for out of county, or which I've done is opted to pay private to a private clinic 6 miles up the road, and I'll actually be having that fitted in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, so at the moment you're probably talking to me at the worst that I've been in a long time. It can be quite hard when the brain and body doesn't quite match what it needs to do. But yeah, that's where we are with that. But in a couple of weeks' time, probably in a month's time, fingers crossed, my story should be different in the sense that I should get this estrogen boost. Hopefully it will work, and then everything else will fall into place.
I'm so sorry that you're having to go through all of this. It just kind of baffles me that you have to struggle so hard. And this is 4 years after your hysterectomy, having had, as I understand it, 19 operations. And I'm really sorry. It's kind of heartbreaking because I sit here and I see this beautiful woman who is a mum and who works and who has this hilarious Instagram page and is phenomenally successful. And it feels like you're in pain, and that makes me very sad. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, which is fantastic. I'm gutted that you have to pay for it, but I'm thrilled that it is happening for you, and hopefully it will be a huge success.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And I just keep telling myself, I'm like, right, I'm doing all of this stuff and I'm on 10%. I'm like, world, be ready for me when I'm 100%, because I've not felt 100% for about 4 years. It's been very up and down. And I'm just like, look out.
How has this affected you at home, being a mum and with your husband as well?
It is tough. We talked right at the beginning about hormones, and, when I was going through my really difficult and dark point in time, my daughter was also becoming, hormonally, going onto her roller coaster. We would be at loggerheads. It was difficult for both of us. And then, you know, the boys in the house were like, oh my goodness, what's going on? I'm really, really open with my children. You know, they've had to see me go through a lot of operations. They've understood what periods were very, very early on, because with endometriosis, there's just no hiding that. So we've always had really open and honest conversations. And if there's a question to be asked, then I'll answer it. And, you know, I feel like it's my job to keep them on the journey with me. You know, my son's 12 now. He obviously is like so grossed out by it all. But equally, I also know that under that facade, he understands, he gets it. And he knows that actually every woman is going to go through this, and that it's important to understand. With my husband, I mean, we've been together for many, many years. He's been with me through all of my journey, operations, and then, you know, after surgery. And it is difficult. It's not, you know, your libido drops, your mood swings go, you know, haywire. He doesn't know sometimes what he's going to get in the day. And you know, there's sometimes when I just want to be on my own. And of course, he had to really hold everybody up when I was completely losing my shit. So he, you know, he's been supportive all the way through, but I think you just got to keep talking. That's all we can do. And, you know, we feel like we've kind of almost grown up together. So, you know, he definitely carries me. I, you know, I'm the singing and dancing idiot on Instagram, but he's kind of like my steady behind. He's very quiet and quite reserved, and he's kind of holding me up most of the time.
I'm really glad you have him, and I bet he's glad he has you too. Leaving work, how did that come about?
Do you mean when I took 6 months off?
Yeah.
So I really got to the point I describe it where my inbox was full. You know, I would have been in a place where I could have spanned, you know, 8 to 10 different things going at a time. My plates would be all over the place, you know, like, yeah, we can go do that, you can do that. And I think work for me was like the last thing to crash and burn. I knew things weren't very good at home. I knew that I was kind of holding everything together to show up at work. This was pre-COVID as well, but the plates were starting to slowly fall. And I remember feeling, as I said, at the time, I didn't know it was menopause. I thought it was just mental. I thought, you know, I was going crazy. And a few people at work would make a few comments, and I just felt like I wasn't doing a good job. I felt like, you know, who am I? I'm not a very good mum. I'm not a very good colleague. I'm not a very good you know, everything. It was the self-sabotage. And I actually went, ironically, to a mental health course up in London. And we sat around and we talked, and it was really a vulnerable space. And I think the penny dropped for me then, that I was like, I'm not in a good place here. But I didn't quite kind of give into it. Came home and you know, and then I talk about quite openly an incident of taking my children to school and not really feeling like I wanted to press the brakes of the car. And then I just came home. It was like this fleeting moment of, just don't want to be here. I made a phone call, spent 2 hours on the phone, got in front of a counsellor, and that was it. I didn't go back in. And I didn't go back in until 2020 in the middle of COVID, homeschooling 2 children, and I did a phase return. And I feel like that's a very luxurious position to be in, that I could take that time. And I really needed to take that time, because it helped me understand what was happening. And then when I came back to work, I just made sure that I didn't shut up about why I was off. I was like, I'm not gonna sleuth back in and be really like, oh yeah, hi, I'm back, and everyone, and it'd be awkward, you know. I feel like we talk about that, we should talk about mental health, and then of course the knock-on effect of women's health, particularly, and menopause. But yeah, so I just came back and said, this is why I was off, this is what happened to me. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. If you don't, and it's awkward, that's okay too. And I just made a promise to me that from that point I wouldn't not show up as me, like, all, you know, I'm pretty, hi, I'm here, but all of me. And I've done that since, really. And even ironically, now as we talk, I'm having a short break again, because just where symptoms are right now, there's just projects and things that I just can't quite reach. So I'm just stepping back, looking after me before I get to that really bad place.
That's really, really great, advocating for yourself and others. How are work at the moment?
So work are pretty good. It's a large organisation. There's always work to do, I think, in the wellbeing space. But for me, I get the support I need, but I think that's also because I advocate a lot for myself. I've said that word a lot, advocate, but I think sometimes we need to not seek permission and we need to say, my health is more important than any of this. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they'll be fine without me for a while. It is hard, you know, the first time I had been off, or any time I've been off with my op, whatever, you do think, oh, the world's going to crumble and I'm so important. And, you know, it's your self-ego talking. But actually, they'll continue. They're fine. They're much better to have you back on full cylinders. When I am in, we talk really openly about mental health, about menopause. You know, I've made that almost my brand within work, really, to be the person. And I call myself the conversationalist because I think I'll have the conversation and I'll have it right up the line. And by doing it, when you said it allows other people to feel safe and secure to do the same, it's so true. Mm-hmm. It's so true.
When women share something, particularly something very personal, it gives permission to others to also share. And you find we all have so much in common, even if it doesn't appear like it on the surface. So I do think you're doing amazing things.
It's so true. I always say, when you start to talk to people, you know, I always say, I've never met another person that isn't just a little bit broken like I am. You know, we're all broken in our own way, and that vulnerability does bring us together. I don't know if brave is the right thing, but it's taking that step to go, you know, when somebody says, are you okay? To say, actually today I'm not, and this is why, or putting that out of office on and just explaining, you know, actually my anxiety is raising its head today, so I'm taking some time away from my laptop, and, you know, you might find I'm a bit quiet, but if it's an emergency, give me a ring, but, you know, I'll get back to you when I can. By sharing, especially in a virtual world when we're not all in offices or we're not congregating together and getting that human to human connection, those little nudges that we can do at work particularly make a huge difference, because suddenly we're the human on the other side of the laptop. We're not the robot that's going to be, you know, 24/7 answering emails, bang, bang, bang. You know, it's just being able to say, actually, this is what's going on for me, and you know, opening up that door a little bit for them too.
Social media and your podcast and your journalism, how has that all come about and expanded, and how has it helped you?
Okay, so I'll start with Instagram. It was funny, when I was off work, I came off social media. I needed to retreat at that time. And I think, again, that was a lot of, I didn't know what was happening, and I was in such a dark place. Once I started getting some real regular therapy in, I started to journal. Considering I love writing, I'd never personally journaled. And that was a real game changer for me. And I advocate journaling so much. I'm like, honestly, if you can do it and get the words out of your head, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just express, rip it out, throw it away, do whatever. So I started to do that. And then it became apparent in my therapy with my therapist, and he was like, you obviously like being creative. And to a degree, I have this kind of creative lid on at work. You know, I can't quite unleash because, you know, I work for a bank. He was like, you know, how do you feel about social media? And I said, well, I'm not a Twitter girl, you know, because I know that's a bit kind of too much from my mind. But I like Instagram. I like the pictures. I like the create. And he said, why don't you blog? Why don't you just, not a proper blog, why don't you just share? And he said, be really mindful, because you've got to be mindful about how it makes you feel. And he said, and I'm not talking about going on for the scroll. I'm going on just to put your feelings in a creative way. So that's what I started. So Ginge Unhinged came because, obviously, the hair is Ginge, and I felt unhinged at the time. So it was born out of really the mental health recovery journey. And then as I've discovered more, and the links with hormones and the links with menopause has now grown and grown and is growing into kind of more of that mental health and menopause world. And it went from writing posts to, of course, reels have come along, and I was like, oh, I'm in my element now, and I get to dance like a loony in my kitchen. I just really love it as a platform to build community and connect, because I think the menopause community and the endometriosis community on there is phenomenal. And I'm so grateful that there is that endometriosis community on there for younger girls, younger women and women going through it, because I had like zero zilch. I did it all alone. And I'm so grateful that that's there for them now to support each other. So for me with menopause, it's the same, you know, people in the DMs, we help each other, we lift each other up, we support, we share knowledge. And I just really, I really wanted to share a difficult message with a bit of quirkiness and a bit of my personality, and do it in a bit of a fun way with humour, because there's a lot on there about HRT and about what we need to be fighting for the government, and all of the serious side that comes with it. And of course that's so important, but I needed for myself to bring a bit of light, which is what I hope I do, a bit of light and laughter to it and a bit of my quirkiness. That's kind of the Ginge page. And then stepping more into the writing, I was asked to do the article for the newspaper, which was amazing. And I was really, really proud to be part of that, really proud to get my words out there and expressed in the way that I would say them as well. I was quite pleased that it wasn't edited, and it was, they used it all, and it was really lovely. And I really hope to do more of that and share more about not only my own journey, but how bring other people's stories to life as well.
And your podcast.
Yes, my podcast. So I don't talk about my podcast much, only because I recorded about 6 to 8 episodes and got them out there. And it was called Chronicles of a Messy Mind, which will be a book later on in life, by the way. And that was about, again, bringing the mess that we have in our lives and talking about it, and kind of, again, with that bit of humour but serious subjects and but not always being so serious about them. And, I've had some amazing guests, and it came at a time when I really felt like I needed something to raise my voice again. I'd lost so much confidence before. And for somebody that doesn't shut up and likes to express quite a lot, to be quite kind of retreated and inward, it was almost a really good practice to kind of start talking to people again. So yeah, I'm hoping to pick that up again. It'll probably have a slightly different format, but right now I've got my head into writing a book. So that's taking all of my energy, is to get a book finished, and then the podcast will kind of be help to kind of share that and share the messages from the book.
That's really exciting, and please keep everyone posted when that's all ready. Is there anything you would like to add? Any words of advice or pearls of wisdom? Anybody listening to this, whether, I hope for one, if you're not relating in a surgical menopause point of view, that you've learned something. I think it's, if anything, we need to just keep reconnecting to ourselves. One of the things that I always talk about is having the conversation, however bold it feels, just go there. There's really, I always say, what's the worst that could happen? Which my kids would say, you could die. But, but really what is? If we just have the conversation about being human, that's all we are. It will really help the next generation. We really need to crack open that door and crush the taboo for them. But it, more than anyone, it helps you, because it gets stuff off your chest, in the same way that journaling does. And be curious about finding out about menopause in all its facets, because my experience is different to yours, different to everybody's. And I think, that's learning and being curious about that really allows us to take that on to the next place that it should be, and advocate for ourselves. I shall say that word again, but yeah, advocate for ourselves. Victoria, thank you so much for your time, and I want to wish you all the luck for having your implant, and that it all goes really well and you feel back to yourself 100%.
Oh, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure.
Take care. Enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.
You can find Victoria on Instagram @GingeUnhinged, and do check her out. She's great fun. Follow us on the podcast apps. Please leave a review, as it boosts our ratings, and spread the word. The way to change the perception of menopause is to keep on talking and spread the conversation. So please share as much as you possibly can. Tell everybody about us and make them listen in. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.